Down to business.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-driven Whiskey Musings broadcast. I am your indelible, ink-using host, Rick. I apologize a little bit for the lateness. I had a couple of technical things that I tried to get taken care of, and so I wanted to make sure that everything was correct, because tonight's episode, I think, is pretty important. We had a couple things happen this week, one of which was the passing of a broadcast icon, and so I want to pay a little tribute to him tonight. We also had an unprecedented weather event that occurred in Texas. The voice is vibrating a lot. Okay, let me see if I can change that here. Let's see, how is that? Blix is on. And Blix is my audio verification person. Has absolutely no issues by letting me know when things are out of place. How is that at this point? Hopefully that should kind of clear some things up, I'm hoping. Anyway, so let's go ahead and start with the news that we had about the passing of the great Rush Limbaugh. So that's the same. I don't know why that would be an issue. Any changes? I'm trying to work this out here. I don't understand why it would be vibrating. But, you sure it's not the sound of the fireplace going on in the background that's, like, added to it? So I can try and take that out, too, if that's the case. We're doing a little better. See, the problem here, folks, is that I can't hear the sound of my own voice. It sounds robotic. Oh, I bet I know what's happening. I get this every once in a while, and it drives me nuts. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get this to clear up. Just give me a moment. See if I can change this around a bit. Let's go to this one and let's see. How is that? Is that better? Did that kind of clear it up a little bit? Live radio broadcasts. Go figure. Okay, so that cleared it up. All right. Well, that's good. That's better. All right. Okay. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. So let's get back on task. Oh, that also means I might have a problem with the call-in portion, but we'll see. Anyway, okay. So to get back on task here. So the passing of an icon. For those of you that may not know, the great, I'll call the late great Rush Limbaugh passed this week. And to be honest, I got to give him props. He was at his microphone for, all the way up until basically the end. I for those of you that may not listen to the man, he continually said that he didn't know how long he was going to be able to broadcast, that he was going to continue to broadcast for as long as he could, up until the point that he could no longer do it. And last week he was at the mic for a couple of days. He had been battling lung cancer. He was 70 years old. But the thing that made the man great was not necessarily his sometimes controversial positions, but it was more the fact that he created a whole genre of conservative talk radio when there was none. The man revitalized AM radio with the talk show, and he's credited with being the forefront and forefather of conservative talk. Now, that, in and of itself, that should be something that people should at least admire and respect. The man did a lot of things in the background that most people are not aware of. And his passing brought out some of those stories. One in particular that I'm, very, very surprised about was John Rich from the country music duo of Big and Rich. John Rich made an appearance on Celebrity Apprentice, and during that time, part of the whole idea of the show was for them to represent a charity and to gather donations for that charity. John Rich's in particular was for, I believe, St. Jude Children's Hospital, and he had never met Rush before. He had heard of him and maybe had like in passing talked to him or whatever, but he called Rush up and he asked Rush, he's like, hey, I'm soliciting donations. I need to try and make it to $1 million for my charity. My charity is St. Jude, so yada, yada, yada. Well, Rush basically responded to him and said, look, I will give, but nobody can know about it. Nobody can know where the money came from. It has to be anonymous. And so John Rich agreed, and Rush donated $100,000, which took John Rich by surprise. And he told that story after Rush passed, because obviously with his passing, he no longer has to keep it a secret. But other people started coming out of the woodwork and started talking about their Rush Limbaugh moments. And there's footage of him receiving the Medal of Freedom from then President Trump, and the look of surprise that you see on his face. He was a very humble man in his non-broadcasting persona. Everywhere outside of the broadcast booth, he was very humble. And he's been accused of a lot of different things over the years, but none of what his private life, you could say, supported the comments, the commentary, the attacks that he's taken on. None of that was supported by his private life. The part that surprises me the most about this whole thing in his passing is the vitriol with which these opponents of his political stances have attacked the man. They have done all kinds of attacks on him. And I apologize. There is this don't know why you're rubbing me. This is Badger. Okay, this is our kitty Badger, and he normally is not inside the house when I'm doing this stuff. But anyway, yes, I know you can probably hear him purring right now. Dude, get out. Anyway, as I was saying, the vitriol, the sheer attacks that this man has been given, I guess, and have been. I mean, it literally is disgusting. I'm sorry. There's no other way for me to explain it. It is completely disgusting. And one of the major malfunctions or the major problems that I have with the situation has to be with the fact that, you know, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, and there's footage out there, you can find it. When then President Donald Trump was caught by a reporter, he had not been told that she had passed. Obviously, he was on one side of the political spectrum and Ruth Bader Ginsburg was on the other side. There were several times where they had disagreed with each other publicly about certain policies and things. But at the time, Donald Trump was caught off guard by her passing. But instead of taking the moment, the unscripted moment, to basically disparage her, he chose instead to honor her. And not that I'm saying that Trump was a virtuous man. I think we can all agree he wasn't in many cases. And there were a lot of times where, some of the things that he did, I don't agree with. A lot of people didn't agree with. But the stark contrast that you take from that moment to Rush's passing and that moment and the difference in reactions of the opponents of their positions is a stark contrast and demonstrates a huge differential between the factions that have been setting up in our society. And unfortunately, rather than just, saying rest in peace, sorry for your loss, and just understanding that his political stances may not have agreed or aligned with yours, but you've gone ahead and allowed, you're at least respectful enough to understand that the man meant a lot to a lot of people, and you've got to give him props for doing the things that he did in his lifetime. But rather than doing that, they've decided to disparage the man and rip into him. And in some cases, even these people, and I'm not even talking about like just unknown, unnamed people. These are like some strong public figures who represent the political left in a lot of cases. And some of them are even like teaching our children at universities. And they come out with the idea or with the statements that are similar to things like, cancer finally killed somebody that was worthy. Things, and I'm not quoting anything here, but things like, I'm glad he's gone. I'm ecstatic. I'm dancing in glee. Celebrating the man's death, the man's passing, rather than taking a moment and just being respectful and either not saying anything at all or taking the high road and just mention, hey, you know what? Rest in peace. Respect what the man did for a lot of people, and just say, rest in peace. I cannot imagine the contrast that is displayed by the people who have decided to take a decidedly rough and very, it was sudden. Even though he did have cancer, it was sudden because, like I said, the week prior he had been at his job. But to take that moment and rather than say, hey, rest in peace, Godspeed, taking the high road, they decide to attack the man and be thankful and celebratory in his death. And this is a stark contrast to the two sides that seem to be setting up in our political society today. I mean, in my personal opinion, even though I disagree with somebody, and again, this is just me now, but even though I disagree with somebody, I'm certainly not going to celebrate in their death. I mean, that is a problem, but that shows a mental state in our society today that is really difficult for me to fathom. And it is, I think, representative, unfortunately, of the way that our social structure has been set up. And we need to start combating this kind of mentality. I mean, you can't imagine, I don't think that you can really imagine the fact that this man, although he had some controversial viewpoints, he did revolutionize radio, talk radio in particular. And, he started a movement when it came to talk radio. I mean, people like Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, all of these other standout people would not have really gotten started, I don't think, if it weren't for Rush Limbaugh being able to step forward into the limelight. So at least give him credit for being a pioneer in that respect. You may not necessarily agree with the man, but at least understand that he did make great strides. He did break certain barriers, and he did create a product where there was none in the beginning. So you got to give him that. I mean, other than that, he did bring a lot of truth to light, I think. I won't say I was an advocate for him. I did listen on occasion, but I wasn't like one of his, I guess you could say I wasn't like an acolyte of his. But at the same time, he was a man who reached millions of people. And the fact that some of these people are saying that he was, racist and evil and everything else, his private life did not show that, did not bear that out. So attacking somebody without having the evidence or the backup behind it, I think is becoming a bigger problem, especially today. And it seems like nobody is really trying to understand where these people, where the evidence and the truth really comes from. We've lost the ability to do the critical thinking, and even just having somebody to question what you've had put forth in your life, it makes you think, it makes you grow. It either validates what you know is correct and true, or it may make it to where, it doesn't validate, it doesn't make sense, and now you have even further evidence of your position being, correct, right, true. But either way that goes, you've expanded your mind and you've created more knowledge and understanding in your own brain just because of the experience. And that honestly is really the nuts and bolts of what Rush Limbaugh did back in the day. So from that, I'm going to go ahead and just put a toast and just say, rest in peace, Rush. We thank you for your years of service, and we hope that you are in a much better place than, where, well, depends on where you believe where he ended up, but hopefully you're in a much better place, and we hope and pray that your family has gotten some closure in your passing, and you're no longer suffering anymore. And that's to me, that would be a good thing. So here's to you, Rush. Okay. Switching gears here and topics. So also something unprecedented happened this week. And by unprecedented, I am talking about records being broken, things occurring that were never thought of. And there's still effects that are going on. And everybody's focused in particular on the state of Texas. Now, let me just give you an idea here. Texas very rarely in some parts, especially in the southern part of Texas, rarely gets down to freezing. There were times this past week where they were in single-digit numbers. And this was an unprecedented cold. And what made this worse, though, was the seemingly unprepared situation when it came to regards to things like electricity and water. Now, something you need to understand. First of all, not any one failure is, as far as what I can tell from the news stories that I've read, not any one person or any one position is a failure in this place. What this was a catastrophic event that was completely unprepared for, and unfortunately was such that these events, this equipment, the whole situation, they were absolutely not prepared for this. Now, as far as the electricity is concerned, a lot of people go and compare Texas with California. And there's reasons for that. I mean, first of all, you've got, population, you've got, the generic, let's say, political stances of both states. You've got California in blue, you've got Texas in red. California being liberal, Texas being conservative, generally speaking. But you really have to look at more than just the differences in those two states from a political spectrum. Both of them are in the southern United States. Both of them have electrical grids that are broken up into spaces with green energies and coal and gas, and we'll call them the fossil fuel energies. The major difference, though, if you take a look at these two places, is that California has put forth a green energy initiative. They've really pushed green energy. And one of the challenges that they have is not necessarily in the wintertime, but it is in the summer, dealing with the power requirements for running all of those AC units, air conditioning units. And they consistently have, over the course of time, had rolling blackouts in California. And so the rolling blackouts in California are majorly due to the fact that they cannot carry the electrical requirements for the people in the cities in California. The same kind of situation sort of happened in Texas, with the exception being that while California gets its sunshine in the summer, obviously, Texas was hit with a winter storm unlike it had ever seen for 100 years. They were covered in snow, places that they usually don't get snow. They were covered in ice. They had low temperatures. And unfortunately, Texas does have a portion of their electricity come from the windmills. They have a bunch of wind farms. They've got places where they have, wind and energy, solar energy. So they have invested in green energy sources. The challenge here, though, is that I've seen estimates of the actual loss of power because the wind turbines froze up. And again, keep in mind, I mean, this is temperatures and a weather condition that Texas is not at all equipped for. I mean, they get it. This is reportedly a once in a 100-year event. And so the windmills locking up due to the weather is just an amazing feat in and of itself. But the challenge here is that the Texas power grid was set up in such a way that it got a portion of its power from those windmills. And the windmills themselves got all iced up and they stopped operating. I've seen estimates anywhere of upwards of 90% loss of the electrical power that would have normally been donated by the wind farms. So a major portion of their normal electrical current, the normal electrical foundation that they have is basically gone. It's withered down to almost nothing by the loss of the windmills. So in order to combat that, they went ahead and they fired up some of their natural gas powered plants and generators. Unfortunately, some of those were not built to withstand this kind of weather. And so they had several pipes that froze up. And this is the same thing that happened with the water, is that several pipes froze up because of the fact that they weren't buried deep enough to combat the 100-year event frost. So it wasn't, and it wasn't just the gas either. I mean, gas outputted, I've seen estimates of somewhere up to 450% over what they normally do in terms of output. And so they tried to keep up with the electrical grid. But the electrical grid itself, the amount of power that was needed in order to turn on the heat in all of these places that are, mind you, down in the single digits for the first time in a century, they say that and I'm sorry, I'm seeing the chat kind of go, so I'm trying to catch up a little bit on the chat there, the conversation going on there. But the thing about it is that the grid itself was not built for this kind of weather. And Texas also used, according to a few articles that I've read, they also have some nuclear power stations. Now, I thought that nuclear power was pretty much all taken out. I thought that there were several nuclear power plants that have been decommissioned here in the Pacific Northwest and everything else. So one of the nuclear power plants had to shut down due to the weather as well, because of the fact that it just wasn't built to withstand that kind of cold. They were ill prepared for something that would happen once in a century. And ultimately, that's where it comes from. They unfortunately did not have enough backup systems to be able to handle the overloaded situation due to a weather event that has not occurred in the last 100 years. Now, one of the challenges that we have, and this is something that's going on in the chat here, is people today have a habit of attempting to blame others. And I'm just going to put up my little ticker here. They want to blame others. They want to put the blame on somebody else. And rather than looking at something and I'm sorry, I appreciate the idea, because in certain cases you do want somebody to take responsibility for it. But the reality of it is that this was something that was unprecedented in all forms, factors, and everything else. I mean, let me give you a story. So I was in the Army, and I spent my time at Fort Hood, Texas. Fort Hood, Texas is in central part of Texas. It is in a little town called Killeen. You might remember Waco, which was about 50 or 60 miles away from the tragic events that happened there. But we are in central Texas. And we had a couple day snow event. And by snow event, I'm not talking about the kind of snow event that's like occurring behind me. I'm not talking about, up to a foot of snow or 18 inches of snow or 24 or more of snow. I'm talking about snow that was maybe an inch or two deep. And for somebody who comes from a place where snow happens, like myself, seeing that type of snow, I was completely like, this is nothing. But the entire post shut down. And the reason being is because they were unprepared for that type of weather. Now, granted, it only lasted for maybe a day. So we got the snow and then it melted off by the next day because the temperatures rose back up. But we're talking about an event here, and that's like a once in a while event for that to happen. And this 100-year level event was so unprecedented that nobody could have been prepared for it. Nobody. I mean, I'm not even sure that the weather forecasters, who regularly don't get things right around here, really and truly got anything right with that weather event. But here's the challenge, is that we all seem to look for someone to blame. We have to find someone to blame. And why? Why can we not just accept that there was a lack of preparedness? Now, you want to move forward from this. So this is a lesson learned. So I certainly hope that Texas and their legislative leadership take charge of this. But I also want to point out too, that a lot of people were blaming entities that actually don't have any semblance of responsibility for this. I mean, I'm seeing in the chat, there's people who are saying that they were blaming, Biden and Harris. And I mean, I'm sorry, as much as I disagree with their policies, they're not to blame for this. I know a lot of people were looking to blame Trump. I'm sorry, but his administration has nothing to do with this either. Realistically, it is more of the local level. And for those of you who want to blame Ted Cruz, who is from that state, who's a senator from that state, I'm sorry, he works at the federal level. This is more of a local challenge. And again, I go back to the idea that this was a once in a century event, something that unless you were trying to plan and prepare for every single eventuality, you just can't cover everything. You can't. The logical person in me cannot sit here and blame any one individual or any group of individuals for something that is so rare. The probability of that kind of storm occurring ever again in our lifetimes is very rare. It's not rare. It's not, sometimes. It's very rare for that amount of cold air to have pushed down through the country to get it that cold. So from that perspective, you can prepare for eventualities. I do it in my job. It's called disaster preparedness and disaster recovery, to try and work through what kinds of things can go on, and you can prepare for certain eventualities, but not everything is going to get covered. I mean, I honestly, even though I experienced snow in the state of Texas, I've experienced snow in the state of California. It is not something that happens very often. And it's not something that people need to, prepare for on a regular basis. I mean, here in the Pacific Northwest, we get snow events every single year. In fact, the area that I live, we get hit with it every February. Not November, not December, sometimes in January. Occasionally we get it in December too. But our normal event, all of the pictures that we have with all of our kids playing in the snow and everything else, it occurs in February. So knowing that, even though we don't get snow every single year, knowing that we at least have the opportunity and the chance of a snow event happening in February, I prepare for it. I have chains. I have snow tires. I have things like that. But you cannot expect the people of Texas to have been prepared for this event. I'm sorry, you just can't, because it is so unprecedented. It occurred once in 100 years. Now, a lot of people could rip on the whole idea of putting windmills in. And I'll be honest with you, I have my own little problems with the whole idea of going to totally green energies. There's a lot of challenges with them. There are a lot of scientific challenges with them. And I've mentioned it before. I don't believe that we are totally going to be able to get rid of fossil fuels like what everybody seems to think we're going to be able to do. And while Texas's situation was admittedly kind of caused by the fact that they lost the ability of those windmills to produce energy, that wasn't the singular cause, because you had other weather-related events that happened and occurred that blocked normally operating systems, such as the gas lines, the water lines, and that kind of thing. The nuclear power, which would normally kick in and try and take over when the solar and the wind energy got taken away. So to sit here and Monday morning quarterback this whole situation and be in the blame game, I think is the wrong approach. And unfortunately, there are several conservatives who have thrown that out there. There are several, liberal left-wing people who are blaming the conservatives for bringing all of that up, and rightly so. I mean, rightly so, because realistically, we should be looking at this as a lesson learned event, and what can we learn from this, and how can we fix it to move forward? And unfortunately, this same event has cost the lives of several people. I'm not even sure of the total number, but I think I've seen up to 70 hypothermic deaths, meaning that people froze to death in their homes. I know of a handful, at least, of carbon monoxide poisoning deaths. And these are deaths, while completely tragic, and may have been avoidable. I'm not entirely sure that you're ever really going to find somebody to blame for these. So what can be done moving forward? Well, I mean, obviously they can try to have backup systems to backup systems, because even though the batteries that were part of the solar system and the wind generation system that were supposed to store the power, they failed because they were not designed to operate in that much of a cold weather temp. I don't know if anybody is really aware of this, but places like Alaska, as an example, okay, because it gets, admittedly frigidly cold there. And even some places in some states like Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, some of those areas that traditionally have cold weather, they have things where they go and they plug in their cars. They have to use engine block heaters in order to make sure that the gasoline or the diesel fuel can actually ignite, because diesel fuel is actually diesel oil. And if it gets too cold, it won't heat up enough to actually burn. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so, there are times where even cars and automobiles can get affected by the cold. And that's, and not only that, but even the
the batteries that are there will get affected by it. Their charge points, I mean, people talk about putting batteries like regular alkaline batteries into your refrigerator to keep them a lot freezing. And when you have temperatures down in single digits, this becomes a problem for even the best batteries to be able to generate the charge out of the battery and make it work. And that was another failure of the system. So to sit here and blame green alternative energy sources and to blame people for this, for a unprecedented weather event, I think is being disingenuous. I really do. I don't think these people would have really been able to anticipate how badly of a catastrophic failure this event could have been. Now, to give ERCOT their credit, they did instill the rolling blackouts. But again, this is a company that was not really designed to, not designed to do this. And so they were doing it in a desperate attempt to make sure that they could at least keep the lights on and not have a total systemic failure. But if you look at things like the Texas event, and you look at things like California with their rolling blackouts that they have during the summertime, one has to simply wonder, although alternative energy sources are important, we can't put all of our eggs in that basket just yet. We really can't, because the efficiencies of those systems have been proven to not be able to handle the full-on draw that is there from the grid. So to sit here and to say completely 100% that green energies, alternative energies, are the only way to go, I think is also incorrect and disingenuous. So I really just think that we need to step back from this all or nothing idea and look at more of a hybrid approach to these kinds of situations. Because even with things like windmills, I saw it reading in an article, a news article, they take up to 80,000 gallons a year in petroleum oil to lubricate them. So even with green energy, you still have other drawbacks. You still have other challenges that you have to overcome. So I believe it's a incorrect position to take to say that we need to get rid of things like fossil fuels in a complete environment and just get rid of them all, because they even have an impact on the environment that is a negative impact. And when you really start looking at it objectively and dig into it, you can see what's going on with the green alternative energies. I mean, they've been around for a very long time. So the challenge here is to make sure that we can continue developing them while understanding that we're never really going to ever totally get rid of things like fossil fuels. So in that respect, I think we do need to continue development, but we can't just walk away from it. I mean, here's an example. So let's just think about this. What would have happened if we'd had all electric cars in the state of Texas at the time that this cold weather hit? You would have had people who would not have been able to operate their cars because of the fact that the batteries would not have been able to handle the cold. You would have had even a further excess draw on the grid because everybody was trying to charge their cars. So looking at it from a very, very narrow point of view, I think is really a big issue. We need to expand that viewpoint, and we can't just take one idea and totally discount it, but we also need to understand that there has to be some sort of a middle ground. And that's a big problem again back in our whole society. We're getting to the point where we're starting to break up and be an all or nothing. We have to either be this way or we have to be that way. We can't be like somewhere in the middle. The middle people have been lost. The middle people have been lost. The ones that are actually making the total sense of what's happening in this world, and with the understanding that yes, we do need to work on one thing, but we can't just give up something else. As far as our carbon emissions go, as an example, to the whole idea of going to alternative energies is to lower our carbon emissions. If you look up the stats, you look up the statistics, you will see that the two top producing countries in the world of all carbon emissions are China and India, not the U.S. The U.S. is actually farther down the list. In fact, I saw a statistic where we were actually cutting our emissions year over year over the past 5 years by 2% every year. Now, why would somebody sit here and blame America for the problem when we're not part of the problem? We are part of the solution, and granted, it may not be moving as fast as what people want, but I can't imagine why somebody would sit here and say that America is a big problem when we have other issues, other countries that are having those issues. And joining back into the Paris Peace Accord, or the Paris Climate Accord, if you really look at the Paris Climate Accord, it doesn't put a lot of sanctions on the number one top carbon emission producing country in the world, which is China. That is an unfair advantage that they have. It's not putting any kind of sanctions on them. They don't have the same standards that we're being held to, that we at the U.S. are being held to. So, peace world. You're saying you're getting depressed. I don't mean for this to be a depressing topic. I really don't. I don't mean for it to be that way. We had a big news week. So, I understand it. It does seem a little depressing. And I agree with you. I mean, I get on my soapbox too. I do. There are times you can ask, Addie, as an example, you can ask her. I get on my soapbox. I do. And unfortunately, maybe this kind of is a little bit of my soapbox tonight. I mean, it sort of is. But I think realistically, my message here is more that we need to have more middle of the road stuff. We can't necessarily have, all one way and all the other. It just doesn't work. It's not going to work. We have to work on trying to come together. We have to work on trying to come together. That's what we need to do. Now, only because the man is in office. I mean, I would do the same thing, Trump said some stupid crap too. I'm trying not to swear on the program here. But I'd like to ask Joe Biden, if I ever get the chance to, I would really like to ask him directly where he comes off with the idea that people of color do not know how to use the internet. I have been to some of the most podunk places in this country, and I can almost certainly guarantee you that everyone that I have run across at least have a familiarity with computers and the internet. I mean, for him to say that low-income people, especially of certain ethnic skin colors, have problems, I mean, that was just incredibly stupid. I'm sorry. That was just incredibly stupid for him to say. And yet, here we go, talking about disparaging differences. Here we go with the idea that him saying he's just an old guy, whatever. He's just an old guy. And it's like, wait a minute. No, 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 no. If you're going to hold one person to that standard, you got to hold the other person to that standard. You can't just sit here and dismiss what one person says. Oh, he's an older fella. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, there wasn't that much difference in age between, Trump and Biden. There's not that much difference in age between the two of them. So I guess I'm confused by the forgiving nature of one person, because if you're going to question people, you got to question everything. You really should question everything. And I think that actually is where I'm at tonight. I think, to be honest with you, I really think we need to question everything. Because if you question things, especially things that are being told, and so I'm kind of speaking to the more of the younger crowd, because I feel like more of the older crowd, we tend to understand a little bit more about critical thinking, but to sit here and say that, you can't question something, you cannot question a viewpoint, you can't ask somebody to say, hey, give me some more details so that I further understand your position, and then offer up alternatives to that position. I think that's really where I'm at tonight. I think that's where I'm at tonight. I want to say we've got to question things. We've got to not take things at the first glance. We've got to dig deeper into stuff, whether it's green energy, whether it's, the death of an icon and how his memory is being treated, to the things that our representatives do and say. We need to question. We need to ask the questions. We need to push. We need to get the answers to the truth. And if we don't like that answer, we need to find the truth. We need to dig. And you'll find that if you do that, realistically, you'll see that the truth does come out. Lies and subversiveness can't last forever. The truth will eventually come out, as long as we, the people, continue to question, continue to push for the answers. And I have to say that's probably, kind of my thing right now. You know what? I see Peace World. Thank you for joining, by the way. I forgot to say that about all the people that are out here. I thank you for joining. And I'm going to warn you right now, you're probably going to hear my dog barking in the background, just because here at the studio, my son has arrived. There he goes. He's saying hello. But so Peace World, I got to tell you, you're right. You are absolutely right. People need to set politics aside in order to heal. And I agree with that. I think what we need to do too, though, is we need to do more of a deeper dive on stuff that is happening. I think we need to do a deeper dive on things so that we can get a better understanding of where things actually are, and not jump to the first conclusion that we've been given. Hang on just a second. I'm going to shut the door. Hold on. I think we need to focus on finding the information, finding the truth. And you're right, politics, getting out of politics and forgetting about politics, that'll make you a happier person, and especially in today's day and age. Unfortunately, it has permeated our lives such that we kind of have to, you kind of can't ignore it. I mean, it's almost like trying to ignore things like, soft porn in movies and things like that. I mean, that kind of stuff. And you know what? Peace World, I applaud. This is great. I'm going to throw this out there. They're in the chat here. Peace World basically said it was awesome how people helped others during the freak cold. The exact quote. And I'm going to tell you right now, right here, right now, people helping others. That's how we're going to get through this. That's how we're going to unite. That's how we're going to heal. Is that if we take our politics and everything else to throw that aside and understand that we need to help our fellow neighbors, that we need to help our fellow man and woman, and just to avoid offending anybody, anything else that you want to be. It is, it's times of trouble and times of strife that you see where things all of a sudden magically disappear. Being left or right or wrong, white, black, none of that matters in times of crisis. Because if we just look into ourselves and pull out our own humanity and understand that we need to be able to be human first and show love to our fellow people, our fellow humans, I think that's how the country is going to heal. Well, actually, Peace World, here's her chat, or sorry, whatever, her chat. I think it's her. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, please. I don't mean to be offensive to you, but here's the quote. I hate to say it, but be human and set religion and politics aside and color. I agree with you on the politics. I agree with you on the color. I think I'll be honest with you on the religion portion. The hatred part of religion, yes, but the forgiving part of religion, I think is really something that we do need to embrace. We can't use hate as a part of our religion. We need to embrace the loving part. So thank you, Addie, for clarifying. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, you've got your whole army and you've brought them into my world. And unfortunately, I don't know everybody. So I apologize for anyone who I might have offended. I'm not uncorrectable. I am not always right. I think I am, but I'm not always. Anyway. Oh my goodness. It's been such a week. It really has. It's been such a week. And I don't mean to be a bit of a downer. I try to not be, but I felt seriously, I did feel like we need to understand, we need to wake up, we need to understand, we need to open up the idea of we need to open up on the idea that we are not evil or good, that we are not 100% right and wrong. We need to stop these factions from forming. You need to get out and you need to talk to your neighbors and be at least open to other ideas. It wasn't that long ago that you could do conversations about both religion and politics, to be honest with you, and have a meaningful conversation and walk away potentially with a better understanding of the other person. I mean, Kirk and I were talking about it on a show not too long ago, that just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean you can't appreciate them for being who they are. Man, the chat is blowing up, and I got to tell you, I love this. So I'm going to take a moment. I'm just going to say this because I missed it at the beginning of the show. I usually start the show with thank you very much for everyone who has subscribed. I always appreciate you. I understand that without you, there is no show. I mean, I could sit here and be talking into an echo chamber. So without you coming and showing up here and joining us, this is really the important part. And this is really what I needed to get out there. That being said, a little bit of self-promotion, just a tiny bit. Sorry, I do this too. If you get the opportunity, check out on the channel. I have my Whiskey Musings logo gear store. Here's another one of the shirts with the logo. Okay. This is the zip up, sweatshirt. That is the only thing, the only way that I do. And I don't even, I honestly, I don't make any money at this, but that selling those products, any of the small amount of proceeds that I do get go to things like the call-in number, which unfortunately I'm not going to be able to pop up because I had audio issues earlier, which is frustrating for me because I've been tracking that down for a while. So I apologize for that. But do me a favor, go check out the Logo store. I have t-shirts, pants, or sorry, not pants, but well, I mean, I guess they are. They're like exercise pants, sweatpants. There's sweatshirts. There's the logo, and there's also my catchphrase, which is "When I drink, I think," which is the whole point of the program. Oh, I love you, Addie. I love you, Addie. I did. Much props for both you and your unicorn husband. They also have like masks and gaiters and stuff like that too. So, hey, you know what? Oh, Peace World. Hey, I just saw your chat. Props for being clean and clean out from cigarettes. Okay. Props. Being clean and sober. I mean, I know this is a show about alcohol, so excuse me while I imbibe, but you know, my brother-in-law has actually been clean and sober for many, many years. And one thing kind of interesting in terms of discussing it, and this is kind of a rambling topic, but you know what? Derailment as usual on the program. Okay? Just so you know, derailment is usual. So here we go. We're going to take an offshoot. So my brother-in-law has been sober for quite some time. And I got to be honest with you, I have a huge amount of respect for him. He was into drugs and alcohol. I won't go into too many details, but he's been clean and sober for many, many years. But one of our conversations that we talked about one time was, I asked him, I said, you know, if you don't want me to drink in front of you, I am more than willing to not drink in front of you if that's a problem. And he looked at me and he honestly told me, he says, this is my problem, not yours. It is my issue to deal with. And he did not want me to stop doing something just because he had an issue with it. Now I can completely understand that. At the same time, I did let him know, though, that I supported him in what he was doing because it was important for him to be clean and sober and to stay sober. And I wanted him for sure to be able to continue to stay sober. So I was willing to support him not only in words, but also in actions to make sure that I wasn't drinking in front of him. But I also have a lot of respect for him for saying, you know what, I'm taking responsibility for my actions and I don't want to influence you for what I did wrong. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it seems, unfortunately, Peace, it seems like their addiction is very, very common between alcohol and drugs and things like that. You know, it's unfortunate, but, and thank you. I didn't say that for any kind of praise. Believe me, I did not. I'm not looking for it. In fact, I don't want any kind of praise, to be honest with you. As much as I appreciate the shout out, I don't necessarily want it because I didn't do anything great. What he did was great, and what you're doing is great. So props to you. In fact, I'm going to see if I can give you a round of applause. Let me see if this works here. Hold on. Oh, that worked. Yay. Round of applause to you for what you've been able to do. I mean, I understand addiction is a very, very serious topic, and it wasn't one that I was planning on talking about here, but you know what? This, like I say, this is wherever the topics take us. I mean, sometimes this just happens, and derailment is definitely something easy. Okay, well, I think that pretty much about covers it. I appreciate everyone for showing up. Like I said, I appreciate the subscribers. Check out, if this is your first time here, check out my other videos here on YouTube. I also do have Rumble, although I've got to catch up on the Rumble ones. It seems like the favorite ones, though, so Addie, you might want to pass this off to your husband if he's not listening, but it seems like the favorite ones are the ones where he makes an appearance. So, yeah, I don't know if that's because he's better looking, more charismatic, more appealing. I don't know, but they seem to be the ones that, show up more in the most played. And I do appreciate everyone who's joined. I appreciate all of my subscribers. I love y'all. It's so great to see. And I definitely appreciate Addie and her army for showing up. But I think as a final thought, just be good to one another. Be good to one another. That's all that anybody can really ask for, is just to be good. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I know this topic was kind of bad, but I actually am on a high because I successfully completed something for my work that I was a little nervous doing, and it went off without a hitch. So I'm actually in a good mood, even though the topic was kind of dour, but I'm actually in a pretty good mood. So I hope that can kind of pass on. But thank you all very, very much. I do appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.